All right, so we have some basic materials down, but this isn't necessarily ideal for game. If I wanted to take this into a game, it would be cool for rendering if we used a lot of procedural materials in here. So what we want to do is take a look at how we can unwrap this guy. What I like to do is start from the top and work my way all the way to the bottom. So let's go to object mode. And the reason for that is when we lay out our UVs, we want to look at our UV panel and see the generic shape of this tractor. So I'm going to right click on the edge here, and then I'm going to vertically split that like this. And this over here is going to end up becoming my UV panel. So let's go to UV editor here. Now within this panel, notice that if I select this and I go back to edit mode here, I can actually, if I hit, I'm on face mode here, I can select all those faces and you can see how it's UV'd. Now I want these to be synced up live, so as I'm editing here or here, they both work, so they work in unison, so I'm going to click this guy on here. Now, even though this is already unwrapped, it's actually not ideal. This is not the way it should be. Another thing is, if I'm planning on doing something as small as a little toy for a birthday cake, I want to try to compact as much of those UVs as possible inside of that little area over here so that I can get maximum detail out of such a small object. So what I like to do is subdivide it and only unwrap half and then flip it. So I'm going to hit Control R here, left click, and then that'll automatically, if I left click twice, divide it directly down the center. Now what I'm going to do is only unwrap half this. So another thing I can do is go to face mode and just delete these faces for now. And that's just with delete. Now remember, Alt Z, we have to, in order to grab all of them, we have to make sure that we are in X-ray mode. So Alt Z is X-ray mode. All right, let's take a look at unwrapping this. If I select all of these faces here, what I really want is to have the seams. Actually, here's a kind of a nice way of doing this. I'm going to go to object mode, and then I'm going to hit I to invert. Sorry, Control I to invert everything, to select everything but that top piece. And then I'm going to hit H to hide that. So now I can really only look at this. All right, so back to my original shot. So back in edit mode with all these faces selected, what I want to do is place these UVs somewhere around the top corner here. So as I build down, it'll leading all the way down to this tractor belt here for the wheels. This should all be down here. So this should be up here. So I'm building down this way. Now, first things first, here are my UVs. Now, if I go, it actually isn't correct because if you notice, when we're looking at our UV, this is a perfect square and this is more stretched out. So just by eyeballing it, I can tell that this is not the correct proportion and this will actually look stretched and weird if I texture on it. So let's take a look at a kind of an example of that, right? So if I switch over to my texture paint panel here and I want to say paint right on the surface, I can go to new and I'm going to just name this tractor. And then my flat color being black is fine. I'm going to go 1024 is okay because it's so tiny on the screen anyway, and I'm going to hit OK. Now inside of this guy here, if I go to my material panel with this bulldozer cube selected, right? So I want to make sure that I'm selecting that texture for painting here. So here's this yellow material I created, and I'm going to rename this tractor. And now for base color, let's kind of expand this out so you can see that a little bit better. If I click this dot, you can see there's all these different inputs, right? And there's brick textures, checkers. I want to go with an image texture. Now, I haven't saved this anywhere. Notice, so if I click on this drop down, it doesn't really show anything. Here's the tractor here, and that's this. But I want to make sure as I'm saving it, it updates live here. So I'm going to go ahead and hit, I think it's Alt-Shift-S, I believe. Yeah, as my save. And here as my birthday cake folder, I'm just going to make a new folder inside of here and call it textures. And then inside this textures folder, I'm going to name this, tractor. It should really be bulldozer, I believe. So we're going to have to rename stuff so it's proper, but bulldozer here, and I'm going to hit save. Keep calling this thing a tractor. So now watch this. As I paint across this surface, notice how it's weird and stretching here, and even though I drew a straight line, and that's because these UVs are not unwrapped properly. So let's go back to our UV editing mode here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on all of the faces. So I'm going to hit A to select all these faces. And what I can do is, if you right click on this panel, you can see there's a bunch of other stuff. One of these options is Unwrap UV Faces. And then there's Live Unwrap. What we want to do is cut a bunch of seams, or we want to mark the seams where we believe that this should unfold. So let's hit 2. And I know from looking at this thing that there's a hole here that I want this to fan out similar to this. So here and here, these two edges here, I should have a seam. And it's already in there now. You can see that it's cut, but just for the sake of practice, I'm going to right click and go to Mark Seam. And now you can see that those seams are marked to be cut. The other thing is, now when I'm marking a seam, we're actually creating we're not cutting the actual geometry, we're cutting the 2D representation of that. So with both of these selected, I'm going to click Mark Seam, and I'm going to go to Unwrap. So with all of this selected, I can right click, click Unwrap there to UV, and now you can see that that looks a lot better, right? So if I click on this to show my texture in the view, and then I go back to my texture painting here, you can see now that though it's shifted, but watch what happens when I draw across the surface. I get a very nice clean line there for that unwrap. Now I don't want my UVs there, right? So let's go back to UV editing mode. Let's grab these, and I'm gonna hit S to scale that down. And I'm just going to place this in the corner. So something like this. Now these all get shifted, and the thing behind this is, like, as you start to build out or unwrap more of these, um, like I said, like, you might end up shifting or moving UVs around. But what I generally like to do is in texture paint mode is, if I know that the predominant parts of these textures are just going to be a yellow, I'll select my paint bucket here. And then, let's see, let's go back to our material options here. And let's change this to more of this off yellow. And if I click on this, you can see now it fills that whole area with that yellow. So as I go through, I just start to paint and drop basic colors across the surface. So Alt Shift S, I'm gonna save that again. Or actually, I think I can just, at this point, just hit Alt S, and yeah, saved image. So I'm gonna hit Alt H to unhide everything else. Let's make sure we're back in object mode. There we go, Alt H. And every piece that has that tractor texture on there is going to look kind of weird, because now they're all applying that material. So if it helps, you can switch back to this mode, to our, we could turn off our texture mode if you wanted, but let's just kind of go through this. So same thing here. I'm going to hit Control R. Oh, we want to make sure we're in edit mode for this. Control R, and I'm just going to left click twice so that we draw that line. And notice that we do have that top face deleted, and hopefully we have that bottom face. So same sort of way that we did it before. I'm going to select this object here, and then I'm going to Control I to inverse that, and hit H to hide everything but this. Go back to edit mode, and then I'm going to hit 3 and just delete all of these faces. Now remember what I said, if you're not in X-ray mode, it's not going to select those other faces. So I'm going to delete all of these. Now something else I was telling you before during the cleanup process is, because these two bottom faces here are not seen, right? They're hidden, right? They're like, if we go back to object mode, you'll see what I'm talking about. See how they're covered by the other parts of the tractor? So what we get here, you can see that here. They're covered, so we're never going to see those anyway. So we want to make sure that we delete those in our edit mode. So back in edit mode here, with these two, it's going to be kind of difficult without us hiding it. So object mode, inverse that, H to hide. And let's go ahead and select these faces and delete those faces. All right. Now I'm going to press A. If I right click, because this is unwrapped already, sort of like a box, if I just right click here, and the shortcut, by the way, is just hitting U to bring up my UV mapping options, and I click unwrap, you can see it unwrapped it for me. So something like this. Now, you want to try to get your UVs as straight as possible. And what's actually kind of bowing this out is the fact that these are not connected. So if I had this welded to another piece, it wouldn't come out this way. So because the area is bowing this way, the culprit behind this is actually this, what's it called? Is this edge here. So let's go to our UV editing mode actually. And what I'm going to do is notice that there's a plane change inside of here. So if I go to my edge mode and I select these edges here, notice that they make up that outside frame. And I right click and I just go to, here, let's go over here inside our view and then do mark seam. Now when I go back in and I right click and I go to unwrap, let's see, let's just bring up our unwrap menu. So you unwrap. Let's make sure it's all selected. Now if I right click, I'm sure the unwrap option comes up too. Or in here, yeah, there we go. Now you could see it's starting to become, I'm going to rotate this so you could see a little bit. It's starting to become more and more straight. And then you might say, well, look at this. This area in here is now bowing weird, and so is this. Well, let's go ahead and just mark those seams as well. So I'm going to go to my edit mode here. I'm going to make sure that I'm in edge mode, and let's make sure that we are in select box. And I'm just going to go through and cut all of these edges here. So mark those seams. Hit A to select all those faces, unwrap, right click unwrap. Let's rotate this a little bit better. It looks like those seams did not mark. Let's try that one more time. Right click, mark seam. Oh, mark sharp. There we go. I clicked the wrong one. And there we go. Now those seams are marked. Now we're slowly getting there, right? So if I hit A, unwrap, it's starting more and more to become a little bit straighter. You can see inside of here too. Now the reason these are so weird is because these are boxes and they're folding in on themselves here. So for example, this is this window in here. So if we cut this, right? So if we mark these seams and then we unwrap that again, notice now this one is a lot straighter. This is that inside face. And what I tend to do for things like this is I'll grab all of these guys, rotate them. Oops. I think I hit O. Let me hit, yeah, it's on here. Let's see. No, it's not there. Oh, let's go ahead and move this around and then rotate this. So it's like this. Now what I'm going to do is just kind of move this in here and then scale that down. So I'm still going to put it in the position where I want it to be, where it initially was, but I'm just sort of placing it off to the side. Now if this was a film, I might actually I might make a procedural glass texture and just place it inside of there. So let's do the same thing here. These are looking a little strange, and that's because we need to do the same thing to these where we break these edges. Let's mark these seams here. Let's mark these seams here. And yeah, let's make sure we're in face mode and then unwrap. You can see now these guys are a lot straighter, and I'm just going to place these right where I need them to be. So scale this guy down here. Now what I normally do is one last unwrap, but I want to make sure that my model is clean once I have this. So notice if I hit N here, we have all of these ugly uh, options, sort of. And so like if we look at here, let's see. Let's go back to our object mode so you can see that a little bit better. Notice that our location, all of these transforms, the scales, none of that is frozen, right? So I'm going to hit Alt-H to unhide this. And this affects the way that our unwrap happens. So I'm going to go ahead and Control A, and I'm going to go down and I'm going to all transforms to delta, and you can see now that's frozen that all out. Now when I go back into my UV editing mode, when I hit A here, let's go back to edit mode here, and I hit A, I give it one last unwrap, and you can see here it's a little bit cleaner from there. All right, so let's go ahead and let's alt click that, rotate this, and that'll select all the faces for that piece. Let's scale this down a little bit. Alt left click this. Oh, that's the roof part. So, oh no, I'm sorry. That is definitely the glass. Jeez, these early 3 a.m. sessions are getting to me. All right, so alt click on this one and then scale this down. All right, now I think that's pretty good because like I said, I was just going to make a glass texture for that anyway. Now with both of these selected in object mode, so I'm going to select this and this because I feel like they're pretty much done with where I need them to be. I'm hitting Control and J to join them. And now with them both joined, you can see that, they're sort of one piece. I'm going to go back to edit mode here, and you can see I kind of have it all together. So I'm going to highlight all of these faces, scale them down, and then just position them up here. So something like this. So just a rough little, Now what I can do in here is the same thing as before. If I go to texture painting, I can just grab my paint bucket here and start to, let's see, fill that individual component there. And then for the glass, the toy itself is kind of black. So I'm just going to grab my paintbrush here, and I will. I do have a tablet, but I'm not using it at the moment. Maybe I'll go a little bit off model and just kind of give it my own glass color there. See there, I'm hitting F to bring my brush down. Let's expand this out a little bit. If you hold Control and Spacebar, you can maximize one view. Now, I normally would just take this in Substance Painter, and but I actually really, really love the painting inside of Unity, or I'm sorry, in Blender rather. I love the Unity, the game engine, but all right, let's get this going here. Maybe too close to that edge, but if I had my tablet, it wouldn't really matter. I got a little bit going on there, and that's fine. All right, little sloppy, forgive me. I am going to be painting in some other elements like black edges and so forth. Kind of because the tractor, if we look at it in our reference, there, Control Spacebar to get out of that. In our Pure Ref reference, has some really nice black different pieces. Actually, let's go ahead and fire up that Pure Ref thing. I'm going to pause the video. Notice here that they have like a little blue, light blue there, and then they have just this kind of black going all the way around, and the top is yellow. This orange is yellow, which really, when I think about it, I kind of like that a lot better, that orange color. So I'm actually going to go with more of an orange there. And then let's go ahead and let's just paint it out. So let's move this out of the way here. Orangish yellow, something. Trying to find like a fun in between here. Not orange enough. Let's see. It looks pretty good. Looks good. Kind of painted in that section a little bit too much. Let's go ahead and really clarify. I like their lighter blue I'm gonna go with something like this. That looks good. I'm gonna hit Alt S to save that. And kind of going all over the place. Let's see. Anyway, you guys get the idea. Have fun. Do whatever you want for your piece. This really should be, like I was saying, get more of a black in there, maybe a dark gray, and then that's a little bit more along the lines of what they have. And we need to tweak it a little bit more. Maybe add that another box up there for the roof. And yeah, it's looking good. In the next video, we'll take a look at baking in some ambient occlusion so that we can get some nice edge shadowing going on around here. For that, though, you definitely want to go with maybe a much lighter gray for the sort of the walls like this. Let's see, maybe something like this. And that way it shows up over it. So let's go a little bit darker here. Anyway, have fun, keep tweaking this stuff, and next video we'll continue to unwrap.